Welcome to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.
Welcome to the Landwards podcast. I'm your host, Andy Newbold, and today I am joined by IAgrE member Harry Henderson, who is Knowledge Exchange Manager for the AHDB. Hello, Harry.
Hello. How are you doing, Andy?
I'm very well, thank you, Harry. Thank you very much for joining us today. Tell us a little bit. Let's start from the start, shall we? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay, well, thanks for inviting me. Well, I was born in North Wales. I grew up on a small beef farm just outside Ruthin in the Vale of Clwyd. I attended the local agricultural college, Llysfasi, that's still alive and well at the moment, and worked on local dairy farms up until about the age of 20. And then I took my first ever flight all the way to Perth in Western Australia to drive broadacre machinery on a 19,000 acre sheep and cereal farm. The impetus for me to do that was, I don't know if you remember the Ford brochure of the FW60, and you had on the front cover of the brochure you had the FW60 and a Ford 2600, which is the smallest tractor in their range at the time, probably in the early 80s. I thought that my destiny was driving that 2600 at 40 odd horsepower, but I wanted to drive an FW60, so I set my heart on going out to Australia. Got a job in Lincolnshire in Lebanon for a season where I doubled the size of tractors. I was from 80 horsepower to about 160, 80 out there, and then applied for a job through the Farmers Weekly and got a job out in Western Australia in Muckenbuden. I then got the travelling bug. I met a fella from Zimbabwe, and his family was farming out there, and I just mentioned that it seemed so interesting. And the next thing you know, he's phoned his father. His father says we could do with a workshop foreman, and so I was offered a job as workshop foreman in Zimbabwe. Hugely interesting, hugely different way of life and way of farming. 300 staff at the farm, all of them living on the farm, and all of them buying their foodstuffs and wares via the farm shop. And I looked after about 6 or 7 mechanics. Everything was repaired rather than replaced, and it was a huge working experience for me, really. I worked for a custom harvester over in the States, went over to Western Kansas and picked up the job there, and then went down to Texas, started cutting wheat with 4 30-foot cut combines at the time, and headed north to North Dakota, and we got there for about October into North Dakota, and then straight back down to Oklahoma, the panhandle of Oklahoma. Started cutting maize, milo, and soybeans, and went and worked our way back to Kansas. Upon returning to the UK, I needed a job quick and just opened the Farmers Weekly again, ran my finger down the classified ads for the jobs, and come across John Manners Combine Spares wanting a mechanic to dismantle combines for parts. So did that for a little while as well, and then took on a job at W. Emmett and Son at Byfleet, large scale veg grower. They also had the main depot was at Windsor, and they farmed throughout Berkshire, but they had a little more specialist crop enterprise on the pack house within Byfleet in Surrey, just inside the M25. I must like the detail of things, because from there I got more of a long-term job as a tractor driver and plot combine driver at Rothamsted Research, and spent 7 years there. I'm pleased to say I cut the 150th wheat harvest at Broadbulk, the world's oldest agricultural experiment, and I used a Deutz Fahr M660 8-foot cut plot combine. After several years there, I took a job with PBI, or Plant Breeding International, at Trumpington in Cambridge. And as I just started, Monsanto had come and bought the company from Unilever, Now we're going to use PBI as a springboard into launching genetically modified crops into Europe. That didn't happen, as we all know. This was in the very late 90s and early 2000s, and there was lots of discussion around whether this should happen, and ultimately it didn't. And when Monsanto sold the business, I became farm manager in the interim time. But when they sold the business in 2005 and moved to Ickleton, and then became RAGT, I applied for a job with John Deere UK Limited at Langer. And the role, really, they weren't looking for an engineer, they were looking for more of a farm technologist, I suppose. They wanted help in establishing their GPS technology, the relatively new crop sprayer range, and to support combine harvester sales in the UK. And the role involved dealer training, dealer support, demonstrations, problem resolution, contact with the factories in Holland and Germany and in Moline, and it was really a great job. There was 4 of us taken on. We were crop system specialists, and I took on the area in Lincolnshire, which was Lincolnshire and probably most of Yorkshire, I remember. And as a quieter area, I took on Wales and the West Midlands as well. Really great job. Travelled the country, travelled Europe, frequently into Germany, frequently into Holland, and then in dealer training events further afield as well. As good as the job was, I missed the farming and agronomy side of things, and knew with any larger manufacturer that was the further you progress in.
Lost you, Harry.
Have you?
We've lost you.
Have you lost me?
You've gone.
You?
You're back. You're back. You're back.
I'm back. Oh,
yeah, we got as far as good as the job was.
Okay. Yeah.
Try that. Try starting from as good as the job was, and then move on from there.
Okay. As good as the job was, and as good as the employer was, I missed farming and the agronomy side of things, and knew any large manufacturer progression within the business would mean more of a desk-bound role. So in 2013, I took a position with the HGCA as regional manager. And this again was a new role, really, to reach out and promote agricultural research to the levy payer and to the agricultural industry in general. I really didn't mind if it went direct to the levy payer or it went via a third party such as an agronomy company as well. The HGCA came part of the Agricultural and Horticultural Development Board, and it's worked with cereals and potatoes, beef and lamb, pork, dairy, and horticulture.
So that's brought us very rapidly in a few minutes over several decades, shall we say, Harry?
Yeah.
Just thinking about back to inspiration, why did you decide to become an agricultural engineer?
I don't know that I was ever an engineer, but I would consider myself the link between practical farming, agronomy, soil management, and the engineers that would turn up with the equipment that and designed and tested and supported the equipment. It's interesting that I can remember lying underneath a test combine in Serbia for some early European harvesting and reading off the different crops to test combine seed tightness and moisture content that a farmer might see fit to tackle. And the combine engineer, the German combine engineer, couldn't believe that our Scottish counterparts would see wheat at 24% moisture and just go for it, especially if the weather was a little bit catchy. It would be a no-brainer. They just do it. So next thing you know, the German combine engineer saying, we've got to go to Scotland. That's got to be a good place to test combines. And next few months, test combine turns up and we go testing combines in Aberdeenshire.
Which, by the sound of things, was a slightly more challenging environment than the sort of continental climate of relatively stable and low moisture contents.
Yeah, yeah. I was in southern Spain, not far from Gibraltar. The farmer out there was reluctant to harvest his wheat at 10% moisture. He said, if it gets to 9, we'll go. And I had a couple of red-haired, rosy-faced Scots dealer personnel with me, and they just erupted. They said, "What? How can this be possible? How do you get anything done?" But yeah, different.
Context is everything. Context is everything. I
Absolutely.
think if we waited for the wheat to get to 9% in this valley, in fact, there isn't any wheat grown, so that's a hypothetical conversation. What did you study, Harry?
Agricultural management with mechanisation, first at Llysfasi in North Wales, and then I returned back to college at Oaklands College in St Albans in Hertfordshire, and topped up with a HND there. And again, that was agricultural management.
So what about your route into the industry then?
I guess, well, I'm a farmer's son, and my father was by trade a beef farmer, but he was also interested in all things mechanical. And so I suppose I developed interest along the same line. And my father went out and bought the lifted D stationary engine and said, "There you go, boy, have a go at that." And got it going, took the cylinder head off, and you peer inside and you look at all the goings on inside, and you polish the brass cylinder head gasket, stick it back on, and get it going. Stick the magneto on a drill to put some life into it, put it all back on, and time it up and start it. So that's what got me going, and I fancied something that would run, or I could drive rather than just watch go putt putt. So I ended up buying a Fortson Standard when I was probably 12, and trading that in, and had a various amount of tractors to play with, really. But I was out and out farming until I joined John Deere, and that was a complete culture change for me. So it was very much more formal, very much more structured, very much more managed. Wearing a tie to meetings was a bit of a shock, but meeting the people and the organisation behind these machines that we take for granted, right, stemming from a casual conversation over a beer, right through to a product launch, the sales, the support, its replacement. It's quite something to experience, it really is. I remember that many of our listeners will know that John Deere have launched a twin rotor combine. I was sat in a pub in Lincolnshire and with a combine engineer, and you get a bit more beer down her neck and say, "Well, what's around the corner there? What's coming up?" And I said, "Well, we're really looking at twin rotor combines." And you go, "Oh, right. Do you want another pint?" So it's absolutely fascinating, the level of work, and it doesn't matter what brand of machine or manufacturer it is, the effort and the work and structure that goes into bringing a machine to market is really quite.
Yeah. Do you want to tell us some more about your journey following qualifications?
Well, tractor driving I love. It's great, but many people will sit and agree with me here that when you're sitting going up and down a field, you tend to sit there and think about how things can be done better. And if you're a little honest with yourself, you'd probably get frustrated that your person you're working for is slow to improve. And early on in your career, you probably think that your boss isn't quite the best boss that it could be, but you haven't got an idea of what the boss is having to deal with when he's not dealing with you, he or she. So I think that's an important thing. So you give up the tractor driving. It is a valuable background to problem solving and understanding issues. But if I could recommend one thing, it would be to travel. And you go and stand in a field in Australia and talk to the farmer there about moisture retention, something unheard of in North Wales, I would say. You go to a farm in New Zealand and hear about the lack of government support. And you stand in a field in North Dakota, and your boss tells you that you better grease the combine tonight while the combine's warm, because in the morning it'll be so cold the grease won't flow through your grease gun or the grease nipple. And so you have you gain a huge background in different aspects of wool farming. Sometimes these machines are to be found in Scotland, in Spain, in Australia, and in America, with little or no adjustment. These machines are so good that you really don't need a acclimatized type of machine to use. So it's a very I suppose the journey for me was travel, and I've been to most British counties, from Kent to Caithness, as I sometimes say. I've been across Europe, and I've stood in many fields working with many machines, with end users, with test machines, with factory staff, sales staff, and you tend to be the glue, would tend to be the person that keeps all of these guys together and bring in a farmer who may be able to help us with some testing. And farmers are very interested. They're fascinated if you can get a test combine on their farm, even if there's one secrecy about its internal. Then that's it's a very interesting thing to get involved with.
So fast forwarding, talk us through or tell us a little bit about your day job now.
So I work for the AHDB. It's the Agricultural and Horticultural Development. It's a levy-funded or farmer-funded organisation, and the farmer pays a levy, and for cereal growers, it's about 46 pence per tonne of wheat sold in the UK comes to us, and then in turn we reinvest that money that goes into the recommended list for your cereal oil seeds, the variety choices. It goes into a document called the RB209, which gives anyone who's interested really the recommendations for fertilizer for different crops, different rainfall types and soil types. We, as part of the role that I took on, we promoted the benchmarking program called Farm Bench, and farmers are able to sit down, get in front of their laptop with a cup of coffee, type in all of their costs, so their fungicide costs, seed costs, fuel costs, machinery costs, and so on, and calculate it all out and produce a cost of production per hectare or per tonne grown. And it's staggering the range of costs that you see coming in. So and cost of production for a tonne of winter wheat, milling wheat, let's say, would be between £100 a tonne right up to £250 a tonne. And I haven't checked just lately, but a tonne of wheat is about £185 a tonne at the moment. So you can see that it's fairly critical. If you can get your cost of production sustainably low, and that's sustainably, I mean year in, year out, it's not much crop. If you've got 1 low year of costs, you've got to have a sustainable run of lower costs. And you can encourage farmers to be more sustainable and stay in business for longer. And this is especially important now where the payment system is changing. So your basic payment scheme for farmers is going by about 2026, 2027, it'll have gone, and it'll be replaced by the environmental land management scheme, which will pay farmers for doing something on their farm. And that's the critical change really, is that farmers have received a basic payment scheme to support them in their endeavours to produce food. I think in the future it will be they will be paid only for doing something, which is a bit of a change. I think that we've worked out that the farm incomes from government payments will drop by 50%. So we're at the moment trying to get farmers to realise this, to get them to plan ahead. And part of my role really is to help farmers understand the cost of their machinery. And I can often be either heard on a podcast or on a webinar, or when we're allowed to face to face, and trying to get farmers to understand the return on their investment, their machinery. And of course, farmers think that, well, what you're trying to do is get me to sell my plough tractor and get a cheap low spec machine to do the same job. That's not the case at all. You can have the tractor that your heart desire as long as you can make money from it. And we have all sorts of farmers that have 10 older tractors. That works for them. And we have guys with one really nice tractor, and that also works for them. So there's no hard and fast rules. You can't really say that you need to put 700 hours a year on it, and it needs to be 1 horsepower per hectare and so forth. It just doesn't work like that. The human element comes into it, and you have to abide by that really. But it's just as long as the farmer is making money from his endeavours, and he should see the equipment that he buys, yes, as an investment, but something that has to earn its keep. And so it's very interesting that I don't think there's a brand issue, but there is a size issue with tractors. And you can buy a tractor 650, 680 horsepower now if it's fully in full flight. I defy any UK farmer to earn money from a tractor of that size. When you see the similar sort of tractor in Australia, South America or Canada, pulling 14, 15, 18 meter drills, we're pulling an 8 meter drill with it. So I can see that things are going to change. There's also the trend, I suppose I'll call it, to do less to the soil. Is it no-till? Is it cover crops? Is it living mulch? Less pesticides, more nutrient cycling. So there's more of a holistic farming trend coming in to vogue at the moment. Whether it stays will be very interesting to see. I think the government are keen to support that trend. They were keen to support the elements, the reduced cultivation, the less cropping on steep hillsides to reduce runoff. They're interested in carbon capture. That might be handled by, what are they looking at, 30,000 hectares of trees to be planted every year in the next 5 years. So that's going to be a big change to things as well. So that's a long-winded way of explaining that I talk to a lot of farmers about their machinery, and an independent voice, I guess, to how a farmer is going to remain independent or financially viable in the next 10 years. Is there technology out there that can help the farmer? Things like auto steers certainly have. You have seen a huge reduction in fatigue in drivers and an output in productivity. We do seem that the variable rate type of technology its impact could be greater and its cost could be less, and I think it would be seen as a more no-brainer type investment on farm. I think at the moment farmers are obliged to use precision technology, but it's not seen as a complete torch on the subject of profitability, and that's where you need to go. So I think we need a Henry Ford moment in precision technology at the moment, where someone produces a widget somewhere which has a real positive effect and is cheap to employ on the farm as well. And I think it will come. There's also the thought processes around precision farming is that it could do a lot to enhance environmental protection. And that might not necessarily be profitable for the farmer, because it's probably advantageous for the world. So is there some funding? Is there some payments available if you can prove that your fertilizer, your pesticides and herbicides have gone on exactly where they should be, hasn't been double dosed, and you can prove on paper or on facts that you can send off to a regulatory body that you're a good farmer.
There's an awful lot on the horizon, isn't there? And I think, as a business owner, as a farmer, there's a lot to consider. And certainly, as an agricultural engineer, even if you don't quite see yourself as an agricultural engineer, Harry, there's a lot of bridging to be done, isn't there, between the technology and the thinking and the practice. Just moving on slightly, what role does volunteering play in your life?
It didn't until a few years ago, and I thought, well, I should really do something. And I wondered what I could do. And then I got a phone call from someone said, "Have you ever judged a ploughing match?" I went, "No." Did you never go? We'll see you Sunday. Oh, okay. So I went off there and I put my tie on. I thought I'd better look at the part. And I went and judged I think it was the horticultural section. And I ended up quite enjoying it because from an agronomist point of view, you know what you need to see. I'm not a match ploughman, by the way, which kind of grates on some of the precedents, but I am an agronomist, and I do want to see weed control. I do want to see uniformity. I do want to see a proper finish, and I understand the ins and outs. So I quite enjoy match plough and judging. So I think word spread. This was probably 10 years ago now. So word spread, and before you know it, you've got yourself booked into a whole autumn season from about September to November of nearly every weekend going out judging at ploughing matches, and it's a nice thing to do. People kind of say, "Do you want paying?" I said, "No, just get me a cup of tea and a pork pie, and that'll do." And everyone's happy with that. So
Man after my own heart there, Harry. Pork pie. You'll be able to publish like a survey map of the quality of pork pies across ploughing matches. Other pastry products are available, by the way.
Well, yeah, but it's a nice day out, and it's always very friendly. And you speak to some guys, and I was at a ploughing match in Market Deeping on the fens near Peterborough, and I saw a Welsh flag on the side of a Fortune Dexter and said, "Where are you from?" And he goes, "Mold in North Wales." And he'd got in his car and his truck, and he's put his Dexter and his plough on an Ivor Williams trailer, driven all the way to Market Deeping near Peterborough, be there for 9 o'clock in the morning, does his stint, stays for the cup prize giving, and then goes home. And he loves it. And you think, oh, that's commitment.
Yeah.
So
it's
a great cross section of life, I have to say. It probably doesn't suit with the no-till, keep all of your living mulch, your living soil near the top soil surface. But it's a nice day out, really.
It is a sort of a proven technology, is ploughing for weed control, isn't it? And it has occurred for several thousand years.
You can't deny it's been around a very long time, so it isn't going anywhere quick. No matter what anyone says, it ain't going to go in the next 10 years, that's for sure.
And I think we'll just keep your dirty little ploughing secret quiet from our friends in the conservation agriculture world, Harry, shall we?
Okay.
Other than if they've listened to this podcast. Just looking forward, where do you see agricultural engineering going? And maybe tie this into what are the key issues facing ag engineering, because I have a feeling that one may be the mirror image of the other.
Yeah. I think in years and in this near future, next 2 to 3 to 5 years, the environment is going to be everything. And the farming will continue. That doesn't mean to say we can't have in the environment and farming together. I think for a long time we've put the environment in the hedge and the farming happens in the field. I think both will come together, and that's where I think the engineering will be needed. And so how are we going to get a crop in the ground when there's a lot of trash on the soil surface. And we all know about discs and hairpinning and things like that, or road cleaners and so forth. So does then the decaying mulch on the soil surface need to be swept to one side to allow a no-till drill to operate, or do you cut through it? How's that going to work?
Or perhaps invert it to maintain soil carbon levels and not let any volatilize.
Yeah, I mean, you're just not taking this seriously, Andy. Really.
No, sorry.
but I think also that there's technology that has benefits as well. Can we fly a drone over a field and tell how much nutrients it needs, how much it has already? And we've had loads of these people fly hang a multispectral camera from a drone and tell farmers that this is going to be transformational in their farming. And they give them some very pretty maps and say, well, okay, how are we going to deal with this map? What are we going to do here? And that's when things sort of fall perch a little bit. Where
what's it telling me?
Yeah, we don't. How do you act? And that's the usual question I have when I come across a tech innovator who says this is transformational. This camera is going to be. This is going to change everything. I thought, what's the farmer going to do differently on receipt of this information? And they go, well, it's going to improve his decision making. Right, okay, but what's he going to do differently to either improve yield, lower environmental impact, lower costs? What's going to change? And that's a real sticky question for tech innovators. So I think that's the role, is going to be combining the environment, carbon capture, water protection, environmental protection in general, with productive farming. And there's people that are very keen on it. There's people that are less keen on the whole concept. There's how are we going to measure carbon capture? Is there going to be a standard that a farmer can achieve when they start capturing carbon, or is it going to be at the moment? It's a bit like the Wild West. You sell all your carbon credits to British Airways, and then go to the UK government and say, right, I've got my carbon to sell again. Go, well, you've just sold it to British Airways for a 20-year deal. So you don't get any money from the government for 20 years. So the small print in some of this stuff is going to be very, very important, because there's no body that will look after the interests of the carbon trading that's about to start happening.
Yeah, as you say, it's completely unregulated, and there will be a lot of traps in there.
Yeah,
so
it will.
There are some big challenges ahead, and I'm quite positive with regard to agricultural engineering, and I think humanity has a great way of looking around corners and finding solutions. So yeah, while there are some big challenges ahead, there's some great minds working hard on this as well, which is very reassuring. Thinking about a career in agricultural engineering, even though you say you're not an agricultural engineer, I still disagree with you, Harry. What advice would you offer to anyone heading into agricultural engineering?
I think be open-minded, listen to people, digest what people are telling you. If you're a tech innovator or you've got some ideas that you might want to get into, go and see some farmers and go and stand next to them and ask them and tell them, I've got this, what do you think, would it work? And they'll be ever so interested, and you'll get the guy that'll say, yes, I'll buy it, and the guy that'll say, no, it's not bloody good. But you take all of it on board, and on the drive home, you don't switch on the radio, you mull over what you've heard, and you will work out the people that were really worth listening to, and maybe you've got their details, and you go back to them and just ask them to just run that past me again. Let me get that head right in my head. And you can form an opinion of where you need to go. And I think there's a great future for agricultural engineers. It's a great time to be in agriculture, but it is going to change. Going back to listening, you can listen to the 85-year-old farmer, and sometimes that's better than listening to the 45-year-old farmer, because the 85-year-old guy didn't have 400 horsepower to throw at the problem. And he had to think outside the box. And I can see in the more distant future that Power sources may change. I do know that John Deere don't really believe that the diesel engine can be replaced anytime soon in agriculture. We're not going to get electric combines or even hydrogen fuel cell combines that are not really going to be feasible for quite some time. But in the future, the fuel consumption and energy consumption will have to change and diminish. And so we're going to have to rethink that a little bit, I think. So there's lots to be done. Listen to everybody. Even the guy with holes in his jumper and he's got his trousers held up with string. You never understand who you're talking to until you get talking to them, and they can be some really interesting chaps to talk to. And you can just be walking up a field and with your head farmer with his holy jumper, and he goes, "Do you know, if I could map the growth habits of my grass, I could manage my sheep grazing better." And boom, there you go. You've got a product. And I think tech innovators and engineers tend to create a solution before and then go off and find the problem for it to solve. And I think sometimes you have to do it the other way around. You go out and talk to people, understand an issue, and then develop the solution around that.
In any interview, there's always that dreadful thing at the end, which is the "and finally." So I'm going to say, given we've talked very much about the future, Harry, and we've talked very much about your career and the steps you've taken to the things which have influenced you to make you the man you are today. Tell us about what's in your shed. Tell us about your extracurricular activities, Harry. What's in your shed?
Well, the thing that makes me glad to come back to work on a Monday morning is, well, currently my partner involved in a barn conversion, which is keeping us busy at the minute. But in my shed, I've got a number of tractors. I've got an International Titan 1917, which was the first tractor to be sold on the island. It needs full restoration, which I hope to get around through this winter and over next coming year. And I've got the original plough that was sold with it. It's a Phipps of Chippenham plough, 2-foot plough, which I think was used at the 1920 Shrewsbury tractor trials near Shrewsbury, obviously. Then moving a bit more modern, I've got a International Industrial 20, which is the industrial version of the 1020 agricultural tractor. That was first owned by Lord John Sangard Circus, operating out of Burford Lodge near what is now Gatwick Airport. And that was sold in 1941 when the circus wound up due to the war limitations on feed and people, and ended up in Shropshire again. Bought some Power Major I've got. Well, that does all the lifting and shunting and pushing and so forth. It's got a David Brown loader fitted to it. People think that David Brown never made loaders for any other tractor. I did make one for the Major and the Dexter. A 33 Land Rover, just for running around slightly faster than the Major. And
nowhere near as reliable, obviously.
No. No, the Major, come hell or high water, will go. It will always run. And I'm settling up my Matthew Harris 701 engine-driven baler for the hay harvest as well. So that's coming along nicely in the shed.
Brilliant. Well, look, Harry, it's been a thoroughly enjoyable chat today. And thank you for giving us such a great insight into your world. I have a feeling, given the subjects we've touched upon, we could have talked for an hour or two more. But on the crack of, I think, 50 minutes or so, 47 minutes, something like that, I think we better draw the interview to a close. So, Harry Henderson of the AHDB and member of the Institution of Agricultural Engineers, thank you very much for joining us today on the Landwards podcast.
Thank you very much, Andy. It's been a pleasure. There's Alan Disc next.
Marvellous. It's a good starting point. Thank you, Harry.
Cheers.
For more information, visit www.IAgrE.org. You have been listening to Landwards, the podcast for the land-based engineering community, brought to you by the Institution of Agricultural Engineers.